Hello and welcome to a special episode of Gardening Australia. With spring in full flight, what better time to look back at some of our favourite stories? Some of them you may have seen before, others you may have missed, but they're all worth seeing again. Here's what's coming up.
I'm going to be talking about insect pests and specifically fungus gnats. Whoa! Oh, what they are and how to get rid of them.
What layer are we up to here?
Country layer.
Country layer.
Clarence is going back to school to meet some students who are growing their skills in science through their pumping garden.
What was underneath the country layer?
Muku.
Muku.
Sophie gets stuck into some timely spring pruning.
Does need a good prune, and the best time to do it is straight after flowering, which is now.
And we take a moment to reminisce with our old friend Tino, revisiting one of Australia's most inspiring gardens and gardening families. Welcome to Edgecliff in Sydney's inner east, a mix of housing and high-rise with all the benefits city living has to offer. It's home sweet home for keen gardeners Philip and Ian. Their rooftop apartment, perched overlooking the busy train line, is their very own potted palace. There's so many advantages to living right here in the heart of the city, isn't there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I catch the train every morning to get to work. So that's me on this train. I get to see my garden when I come past in the morning. And it's great. I take a little photo sometimes. Yeah.
See how things are growing?
Yeah, exactly. Every 2 minutes there's a train. It's great.
We're really lucky to have this place, actually. Like, we're so lucky to be able to have the opportunity to have a garden here and be able to do this.
The total space up here is 350 square metres, of which 200 square metres is the garden.
So we've tried really hard to plant as many natives as we can. We have a lot of grevillea, like around 15 to 20 grevillea, all in pods. The callistemon, eucalyptus and banksia, but also lots of produce.
Yeah, I like to cook with the produce from the garden. I'll take, you know, the herbs out of here. We use the rosemary almost every night, the coriander now. It's fantastic. Phil got me onto the native trees, and I'm eating the lily-pilly berries now. They're like little mini apples.
Yeah, and you made jam from them as well. And
Yeah.
gave it to all our friends and everything.
So, Costa, this is a Eureka lemon tree. It used to have lavender underneath it, but we took it out and just put in some mulch there, and it's taken off.
I mean, that's a good move because lemons don't like any competition for their feeder roots, which dwell on the surface. And to think you've had such a result, I mean, there's a lot of fruit on here. Now, through all the foliage, my infrared compost goggles has picked up a compost bin, and I like the fact that, you know, we can't take for granted, you don't have the chance to put the compost on the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is really appropriate in this space.
Yeah, so Phil bought me this for my birthday this year.
Oh, what a gift.
Yeah.
That's the kind of gift to win a gardener's heart.
So we joined the share waste thing after seeing it on Gardening Australia.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's one of my favourite projects.
Yeah, it's really a win-win because they want to get rid of their scraps in an energy-efficient way, and we want the scraps to use in our garden. So
Yeah.
it works for them, it works for us. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And how's it looking?
Well, have a smell.
That smells good. Now, moisture-wise, it's perfect. There's enough heat in there
Yep.
that it's doing its job.
So we just put it out onto the veggies like that, or do we mix it in with soil?
You can turn it into the soil once you've cleared a crop, or if you're just feeding the bed, just spread it around,
Right.
mulch over the top to protect it from drying out, and that compost will perform all that feeding and water holding roles. So what was this space like when you first came here?
So it was all one deck that was all in pieces, basically. And so we had the choice, do we just leave it bare and do nothing with it, or do we actually make it into a garden?
So what have been some of the challenges that you've faced setting up a garden on the roof here?
So we've had a lot of challenges. First one being the weight of all the pots and plants.
We engaged the engineers that designed the building originally to actually understand whether this rooftop could take the weight. So one of the cube planters there weighs 1.1 tonnes when full of soil and full of water. I think we've got about 13 cubes, so that's 13 tonnes of weight on this rooftop, just in the cubes alone, plus all the other pots as well.
And also drainage for the entire space. So we need to make sure that it slopes all into one corner.
Drainage is a really big one. So we did a special system with drainage cell. We put a geofab material and then sand on top of that. And that really helps just allow the water to flow straight through. And it's worked quite well.
Wow, there's a lot of flowers going on in this little corner of the garden.
So these are my favourite grevilleas in the whole garden, the Dew of Flame. And I just love them because they flower all year round and attract heaps of bees. We've just used premium native potting mix for our natives, and they seem to be doing well.
You know, this is a good example of sticking to that basic rule and getting the success.
Yeah. With the bottle brush here, it flowers beautifully, it gets the birds in, but we want to trim it back a little bit, but we're not really sure. We don't want to go too heavy. How would you recommend that we trim it back?
Where you've got the flower spike, once that's finished flowering, just take it back to about there. That will keep it nice and dense. If you get any dieback in the centre, just cut that out, and that will encourage more light in to encourage more shoots.
Yeah, so we live inside right there, and we look at this all day. So we've created a nice mix of natives along here, and it works quite well, creating that screen, blocking out those buildings over there, creates that privacy.
The garden gives so much, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. What you put in, you get back. This is like our space. You know, we've put all the effort in here ourselves, and it's just so rewarding to know that we've done it. You know, we've put all the effort in, and we're reaping the benefits of it.
Yeah, and can share with other people, yeah.
Yeah. Who's thirsty?
Yeah.
What have you created there?
These are some lemon cocktails with rosemary sugar syrup.
Wow.
Thank you.
A little gift, a lemon myrtle.
Oh my
which
God.
Beautiful.
you will be able to use in lots of new cocktail constructions.
Absolutely.
And I think it'll thrive up here. This high-rise haven is a little slice of health and happiness. Well, here's cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to gardening up on the rooftops.
Deep watering is simply watering effectively and getting the water to penetrate through the soil profile past the root zone. So that's about 30 centimetres into the soil. The best way to check this is simply to get your spade, scrape the mulch away, and after you've watered, dig down to see how far the water's penetrated. Now this soil is still moist, so that means my water is effective. It's penetrating 30 centimetres into the soil. It's encouraging my plants to have a strong, deep root system, and that way they'll be better able to withstand dry periods.
A keen composter wants to know if they can compost an old cotton shirt. Well, yes, you can. I've done it. I've even composted old cotton undies. But what I found, not surprisingly, is the elastic didn't break down, so you have to throw that bit out. Any natural fibre will break down, and in a good composting environment, it can happen within a couple of months.
Are there some herbs that'll cope with a bit of shade? Well, yes, there are, and they'll tell you by looking at them. Things like these, they're rosemary and thyme, those tiny little leaves. They are adapted to hot, dry climates. That's why the leaves are so small, to prevent water loss. So they're not really suited to a shady spot. Leafy herbs, parsley and basil, well, those larger leaves, they can cope in a lightly shaded position. They can soak up a bit more sunlight. If you've only got a really dark spot, I suggest you give this one a try. It's wasabi, it has a beautiful large leaf, and it's really adapted to the dark. And it packs a real flavour punch.
The very best gardens take teamwork, evolving over time, combining passions, ideas and creativity. Over many decades, one family worked together to create one of Australia's most inspiring gardens. Recently, they lost their founding gardener, Robert, and in tribute to his lifetime of nurturing and growing, we want to take you back and revisit one of our favourite places with one of our favourite faces. Here's Tino.
Up in Tassie's north, between Cradle Mountain and the coast, is Nyetta. The landscape around here is rugged and wild. Tucked away up here in this beautiful part of the world is an epic garden that I've wanted to visit for years. Cadale is a 2-hectare country garden with a reputation that draws people from all over Australia. And behind every impressive garden, there's an impressive gardener. And here, there are 4. The Crotons are a tight-knit family that have poured their hearts into this place for over 5 decades.
Dad bought the farm 50 years ago. It was all logs and blackberries and rabbits and no fences. And so he cleared that. And Mum came along and then they started the garden about 40 years ago.
Yeah, so it's been a really good democracy because the 4 of us are all interested in different things. Guaranteed to make sure that Dad gets less farm and more garden every year, whether he wants to or not.
And a lot of negotiation.
Yeah.
Collaborative effort.
Everyone's a treat.
Amali and Leslie have taken over from their parents in the all-consuming effort of maintaining the garden.
Well, we don't count the minutes or the hours, thank goodness, but we're pretty much in it every day. There's always weeding, mulching, pruning, using the chainsaws, lawnmowers, everything, so...
Yeah, well, it's always a good day if you can use every power tool you own, so...
I've got 5 chainsaws, and so a girl can't have too many.
She can't use them all at once, though.
I can try.
The woodland was the first area Kay and Robert created, planting maples, birches and cottage plants. There are now 75 maples. At the time, it seemed like a big project, but it's now tiny in comparison to the rest of the garden. Wow! What an amazing feature.
Yeah.
Pear trees?
Pear trees. And we had a lot of fun. We sort of planted them about 24 years ago and about 27 pear trees all up.
Yeah, and Dad laughed when we first planted them. You actually cut them off at knee height.
Yep.
So you have your long, tall tree and chop it off that low and then wait every year for each layer to grow up. Now we're having a bit of fun actually grafting them all together.
Oh, they're all grafted?
Yeah,
nice.
So each actual tree is joined. So technically it's one pear tree with 27 root systems.
And how many grafts do you have?
Yeah, if I'd done the maths earlier, I would have realised it was 180 grafts to join each tree on every layer. So, yeah, we've still got 10 to go, but, yeah, we're nearly there, nearly got them all joined up.
It's an amazing garden feature, but it's productive. How much do you get out of it?
Yeah, a lot. We've never actually done the kilos, but we sort of do more bottling. So I did 110 of the size 36 Fowler's bottles 2 years ago, and then last year was a rest year, thank goodness. And this year it looks like it's going to be another good year.
In a region that gets smashed with strong winds, thousands of mil of rain and plenty of snow in winter, the garden definitely moves through the seasons. In spring, millions of bulbs burst to life to create carpets of colour.
This is the Fritillaria lawn.
All of this?
All of this. We grew them from seed and it took us about 10 years.
Wow.
And we ended up sort of growing about 7,000 and we told Dad we wanted to do the Fritillaria meadow and he said, oh, a couple of metres. And it's like, no, the whole bank.
I love the sculpture.
Yes, we've got a local artist and he did that for us because they're so fleeting.
Yeah.
And so that gives an idea of what's there when they're not there.
Wow.
Yeah, you've timed it perfectly. The wisteриas are just coming out. This project was the most fun. We ended up sort of pouring the columns and everything. Dad bought us the mould for it for $20.
You made these columns?
Yes, it was one of those spare time jobs over 3 years.
Wow. Oh, it's come off a tree.
Yeah, well, it's been 10 years now and the wisteриas are just starting to cover over the roof. Especially this time of year, the perfume's really lovely. Stunning. With the wisterias.
And you've put them in the central points.
Yeah, so because we've seen what wisterias can do to like 2-inch pipe, we decided no wrapping around the columns.
In the end, Marley's going to graft them all together like we do with the pear trees.
Yep.
And so it'll end up looking like a giant spider web in winter. So there won't be any writhing massive wisteria or even
something easy to prune back to.
Something easy to prune.
Oh man, that's fantastic. K-Dale is remarkable, not just for its beauty or its size. It's about the family's undaunted, do-it-yourself approach. Later in the show, Marley and Leslie are going to share the process behind their mammoth rockwork projects.
I love most insects because they're the pollinators of plants and the cornerstone of the food chain. But a house full of fungus gnats really gets up my nose. Luckily, Jane has some tips to send them packing.
Hi there, thanks for dropping by. Come on in. You're most welcome. It's a little bit untidy, but you'll forgive me. It's really nice to have visitors like you who appreciate my indoor plants. But there is one visitor that I really don't like, and that is the fungus gnat. You'll first notice these uninvited guests when they arrive in their adult form. They're tiny, they're about 3 millimetres big. They're black mosquito-like flies, and they hover in small groups just above your indoor plants. While the adults may be flying around, they're only annoying. They're not doing much damage. It's beneath the potting mix surface that the damage is happening with the larvae. They live under there, they chomp away at the plant roots, they even get into the stems of the plants, and they have got an insatiable appetite. How do these little critters even get into our home? Well, it's through no fault of our own. They can come in on newly purchased indoor plants or even in a bag of potting mix. So it's worth checking when you're in the nursery. All you need to do is look at the potting mix of the indoor plant, just turn it around a little bit, and if you see little tiny maggot-like larvae, give that plant a miss. You mightn't have noticed any little flying critters or any larvae in the soil, but you just might want to check to be doubly sure. And there's such a simple way of doing it. A good old potato, raw, and a slice of potato, nice thin slice, and you put this thin slice of potato on the top of the potting mix and leave it overnight. And early next morning, check that little piece of potato, because if there are larvae there, they will have gone straight to it. They love the starch. They absolutely devour it. Basically, fungus gnats love rich, damp potting mixes, and given the right conditions, they can breed up really quickly and complete their life cycle within 3 weeks. A female can actually lay between 100 and 300 eggs, so you might have a perfect breeding ground in here. But there are ways that you can break that life cycle. Their life cycles can be easily interrupted by allowing at least the top 10 to 15 centimetres of potting mix to dry out between watering. Overwatering of indoor plants causes enormous problems. Saturating the soil means that the roots can easily rot, and that gives ideal conditions for these little fungus gnats and the larvae to get in there and really chomp their way through. So keep the water out of the saucer, that's really important, and keep the indoor plants on the dry side. Much better to water irregularly and just let the soil dry out. Apply a soil drench of neem oil to the affected pots at a rate specified on the bottle, and you repeat this once a week for the next 3 weeks. While we may dislike the fungus gnats, there are certain types, particular strains of nematodes. They live in the soil and they munch on these fungus gnats. They really like them. You can buy sachets of the soil nematodes at various nurseries. You use it as a soil drench, and one sachet will go a long way to killing a lot of the problems. Bright yellow sticky traps can attract and trap insects as well, but why not use nature to its best? Use some things like the carnivorous plants, like the butterworts, or in this case the drosera or the sundews. They have wonderful sticky leaves that attract and trap insects and then use them as food. You can even see little gnats on those sticky leaves. So there's nature working away. I know we do go on about the benefits of mulch, but in this case, there's a really effective way to break the cycle of these fungus gnats. And this is using an inorganic mulch. It's like a pea gravel or an aquarium stone. Just use it as a mulch around the base of the plant. And that barrier stops the females being able to lay their eggs in the soil and stops the adults being able to emerge. And it's a really effective way of controlling them. While it might be nice to wave your magic wand and say, Natus expelliarmus, to get rid of these little blighters, you can just follow some of those tips and you'll get rid of those freeloaders once and for all.
Clarence is checking out a school garden that's growing knowledge and scientific skills alongside some spectacular produce.
South of Wollongong in Sydney is the seaside town of Port Kembla. It's famous as one of the world's largest industrial hubs, but hidden from view are the town's seriously industrious students here at Five Islands Secondary College. What about, I don't know if you know, but shallot is not spelled with an S at the start, it's an E. Yes, it's an echalot, not ushalot. It doesn't help a lot when I tell you how to spell echalot. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Remy, here's another one, buddy. Thank you. The school garden's been up and running now for a few years. The design is loosely based on the shape of a whale's tail, and that's out of reference to the song lines that travel the east coast in relation to the whale. It's also some of the stories that relate to the cluster of 5 islands that are just a stone's throw from the school. Teacher Lara Walsh was really keen to connect the garden to the local Aboriginal culture.
As part of our design process, we did a lot of talking and a lot of listening to members of our local Aboriginal community, and we had a lot of involvement from our Aboriginal liaison officer, and we've really selectively put a lot of native plants through our shelter belt, and there's medicinal and there's food plants, and so that's a really conscious reference point for us. We sit in the shadow of a lot of industry here, and that's always looming large. And one of the important things about our garden is it's a beautiful aesthetic space, a space to come and connect.
So you've been involved in the garden from its inception or from the very early days?
Yeah, I sure have.
So it looks like you would have had to bring a fair bit of material in to build up these beds.
I think there was 200 tonnes of compost around that.
200 tonne?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because this area is built on fly ash from the steelworks, so it's mostly just polluted soils. So they put a compost plug, and then they put lots of fresh materials to create a barrier.
So you're letting the nutrients leach down, but you don't want the toxins to leach up.
Yeah. That's why what we do here is really working. Get some sun-dried tomatoes out of here, really.
Do you have some compost?
Catering for Year 11 and 12 students, the school is providing a really innovative approach to education.
Okay, guys, so we're going to dig up this oregano, but what we're going to do, because you'll find it's rooted in the middle.
So we run a permaculture course in Year 11 and 12, and they study it as a science subject.
Is that way for you guys?
And I think that that's really important because it makes the learning that can sometimes be an add-on, gardening, embedded in curriculum really seriously. It's got to you and it's worth the value. It contributes to students' HSC.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
There we go. Oh, look out. That was heavy. Lucky I had that other hand there.
Couldn't have done it without you, Clarence.
This is a really impressive compost pile you've got going on.
Thank you, yeah. We made it in the Year 11 12 permaculture class.
So I guess this is the thermometer to measure the temperature?
Yes, so it was 50 degrees within the first day that we started making it, and we could put it in.
Yeah, we should see what it's at now, yeah?
Yeah.
Because I guess you need that temperature to really start to get the bacteria moving?
Yes, we do, yeah. With the thermophilic bacteria, we want to build it up to try and, release the good bacteria.
So what sort of temperature range are you looking for?
Yeah, it ranges from 60 to 70 basically all throughout the day. Can even jump over 70, but we don't like to get any more than 75 or under 60.
So are you seeing a much better engagement in their learning outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. Down in the garden, you see students who don't necessarily thrive in other environments, who just pick up and lead other students. And that's one of the phenomenal things. It really allows a diverse group of students to shine.
There we go. What are we doing here, guys? What layer are we up to here?
We're up to the comfrey layer.
Comfrey layer. What was underneath the comfrey layer?
Moo poo.
Moo poo.
Yeah. I did biology before this, and being able to apply it practically and being able to look at plants and learn their names and what's in them and how they work and how they all interact and work together with each other is phenomenal.
So with the no-dig, it's all about the layers, yeah?
Yeah, it's all about the layers. So it's all about building the soil and making sure it has enough nutrients for what we're putting in it. So we don't want to disturb the soil that's already here.
Yes.
We want to be building on top of it and adding to it.
So just layer upon layer upon layer?
Upon layer, yeah, exactly. We just want to keep going.
So we're at the comfrey layer now. What's happening here?
This is the activator for the compost that comes after it. So there's just plenty of nutrients just locked in there, ready to be released as soon as you put something in.
This is where we're at.
All right, Clarence, so this is pocket planting.
Yeah.
I'll give a little demo. I'll usually part the straw with our hands just to make a little space. We'll put in some compost that we made about 12 months ago. So here we've got some broccoli and plant it up to about here.
Yeah.
We'll pop it in there, put the compost around it. We'll give it a little watering of this seaweed solution, which just stops root shock and, yeah, gives it the best chance at survival. We want to let it breathe and give it space so the sun can get to it and it can work its magic. Yeah.
It's really beautiful. There's always something to do, and we work as a community, so it's really cool. Everyone helps each other out.
I like this idea of pocket planting. So as an educator, what are some of the things that you hope to see as a result of the course and the garden itself?
Yeah, the course is really, really important, and the garden's really, really important in some exit outcomes that, we would like to see students who come here leave with. I think that's what's unique about permaculture. It's beyond just a set of skills, it's beyond just a set of knowledge. It's actually about developing the self, connections with community, and a really strong set of personal ethics. And for me, what more could you want from education?
I've had an amazing day here at Five Islands Secondary College. Beautiful people, beautiful garden. And what better way to get connected to your learning journey than through connecting to country, connecting to our Earth Mother, and just connecting to the people around you. And this watermelon is unreal.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Millie makes some sweet use of an unused spot in the garden by planting strawberries. Switch on your smell-o-vision, because Jerry gives us a noseful of his favourite fragrant plants. And we revisit a creative native plant lover to see her absolutely fabulous creations.
The Croden family have built everything on their 70-acre property themselves, including the house and the extensive stonework through the 2 hectares of garden. So, Who's the stonemason here?
Oh, that's me. Marley sort of thinks up the projects and I tend to sort of push and love doing the stonework.
What's the appeal?
I think it's the permanency and sort of just rocks and concrete in general. So, yeah, it's like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Can't beat a bit of hard landscaping.
Yeah.
Especially when the farm's got so many rocks. So, yeah, down in the rockery here, we cut about 160 tonne of rocks off the back boundary. And by the time Leslie's done all the stonework with all the tonnage on that, I'd hate to work out how many rocks we've used.
No, don't do the math.
But it gives you a nice little protected site here.
It does. So it protects from the southwesterly, and you sort of have the sunny side where it has the drier things that like heat, and then on this side you've sort of got the hostas and the ferns and everything like that. So you've sort of got two different microclimates in one section, so you can play with foliage and everything, which is really good.
Yeah, and a good excuse to try a few different rarer things that might not tolerate our cold climate quite so easily.
Yeah. A bit like the succulents and the sapinarias and the Louisias and everything like that. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun with colour and texture.
So how long does a wall like this take you?
Oh, this one would have been a couple of 100 hours.
Yeah.
So just a little while.
It's a pretty serious shed.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. You can't beat a 20-year-old tin shed getting a makeover.
Yeah, we had one lady ask if it was going to be a church, and we said, yes, it's our church of tools.
The project currently on the go is a stone wall to protect the veggie patch. So this one here is about halfway done.
About halfway done, but we finished one over here last week. It's mainly for the wind, which we get from the southwesterly direction, and it's pretty strong. So it's sort of, we're a bit concerned to hit the wall, then come up over and be twice as strong to join with that other wind. So that's what this is for. So we're putting metal cutouts all the way along just to diffuse that wind. So one of those half-finished projects that are always fun.
Genius idea.
It'll be good when it's done.
So what materials are you using?
Yeah, we use a lot of cement.
Structural, yeah.
Structural, and then we use a lot of mud. So this is bricky sand.
Yep.
And it's sort of, you get it to the consistency of Play-Doh, or we decide that we haven't played with enough mud when we were kids. When you can shape it into a ball, it's like the perfect consistency. And so I give you that one, and we'll go and have some fun with the actual wall.
So this is where the stone comes into play.
This is where the giant jigsaw puzzle comes into play. So we sort of go through and you end up with some weird and wonderful shapes. So we'll put this one in, I prepared earlier. So here we go. So we'll pull that one out, and if you put yours in one side, squeeze it down in a long
ribbon? Yep.
Yep.
That gives it something to rest on.
And then you bed it in and just push. And then the main thing is with your string lines that you make sure that you're on the inside of it. So you sort of look down the line and you line it up with your two string lines and your edge of the steel that we have. And that's you have to wiggle to keep it moving. And then just put some cement behind it and fill it in. And then walk away.
2 hours later, you might put another one on top.
Yeah, and then what Marley does is she goes through and she tidies up. So you probably put a little bit more mud in there.
And then you, sponge it off or something?
Sponge it off. Yep. That's Marley's job. Yep. My job is to mix the concrete, and she has to clean up the wall.
So what are your plans for the future? Would you ever leave this place?
No, definitely not.
No, like Mum and Dad always joke, take them out in a box and we'll probably be the same. Yeah. And I think Mum had it right, like when we were younger, she'd drag us off to folk art and beading and wood turning and, find out what you enjoyed, and it just turned out to be lots of different things with the garden. So, yeah, when you can do what you love, it's not a challenge.
No, it's fun.
The Crotons have dedicated hundreds of thousands of hours of loving labour into this patch of land. Across 2 generations, they've created a spectacular world for themselves and for any of us that are lucky enough to visit.
love all plants, but what I grow here in the Adelaide Hills is dependent on my climate. Baking hot summers and frosts in winter. Plants in my garden cop the extremes. I grow a number of hedges around my property to act as windbreaks because we're very exposed, and this is one of my favourites. It's a hardy old-fashioned plant called Viburnum tinus or Laurus tinus. It comes from the Mediterranean region, so it's perfectly suited to my climate, and it's long-lived. One of the things I love about it is that for 3 to 4 months in winter, spring, it smothers itself in heads of white flowers with pink buds, and they're absolutely beautiful. But it does need a good prune, and the best time to do it is straight after flowering, which is now. So the idea is to try and prune your plant before it puts a lot of its new spring growth on. You can see this growth is just starting to happen. Now, my vision for this hedge is actually to get up to 2 metres high, and people often say, well, why would you prune it if you want it to grow taller? It's because I want the growth to be even and uniform on the top, and I also want to keep the plant really compact. So, by giving it a prune, it'll look great as it grows. I grow a number of different species of Iochroma, and I just love them because they flower over such a long period, from spring all the way through till the end of autumn. They're hardy once established and only have moderate water requirements, but they're frost tender, which is why I grow them up against the stone walls of my house so they get the radiant heat. They're actually evergreen in milder climates, but here they have become totally deciduous, and it's when they start to reshoot in spring that I become aware of all the growth that's died back and been killed by the frost. So now's the time to prune that off, as long as the risk of the last frost has passed. When you're pruning something this tall, a pole pruner is really handy. Hang on, I've jammed it. Let me just give it a whack. The tip of this branch is dead, so you can see the lovely new spring growth. I just want to remove the dead bit. Plant I'm pruning is this Eleagnus submacrophylla. This might look a bit brutal, but with a big hedge like this that's out of control, it's the right tool for the job. So get out there and give the plants at your place a spring prune. They'll love you for it.
Got a spare sunny spot in the garden, a little bit of time and some offcuts of timber? Well, so has Millie, and she's got a productive use for them.
In my garden, absolutely nothing goes to waste. I had some timber left over from another job, and I've got this sunny spot on the driveway which I've been eyeballing forever. So today I'm going to put the two together and I'm going to make a sweet little spot for growing strawberries. I want to make a stackable, relocatable strawberry tower. The planks simply lock together with notches at each end cut to the width of the timber. Each tier is a little smaller than the one below so that they just sit one on top of the other. I'm using some geotextile fabric to line the base layer. This will stop the soil washing out. Strawberries are hungry plants, so I've made up a really rich mix here to grow them in. I'm using premium potting mix as the base, so it'll drain really freely, but I've amended it with some cow manure, a bit of my own homemade compost, some worm castings and some coir peat to try and hold a little bit more moisture. The one thing that you shouldn't use with them is anything that is quite alkaline. They like an acidic soil, so avoid mushroom compost or chicken manure and you should be right. This is a generous amount of soil for a small number of strawberries. Fill it in from the sides first, which means you'll pin that fabric up against the edge and then shovel in the centre. second tier is slightly smaller than the base layer, which means it stacks right on top. Now, the beauty of a system like this is you can use it any way you like. You can stack these in different shapes. You could even use a long piece and then one of the shorter boxes to make a rectangular planter. They're really versatile. So I just need to fill this second layer with the same mix as the first. For the third tier, it's easy. It's the same as the first two. Strawberries are also quite thirsty plants. For good quality fruit, you need really consistent moisture. So in this smallest top level, I'm going to put in a little trick. This is a handmade terracotta oya. And what happens is you bury it in the soil and then you fill it with water, and the water can just seep out into the surrounding soil through the day. And then fill around it. Now, before we get to the really fun part, the planting, a little botanical lesson. Now, a lot of people call this a berry, a strawberry, but in fact, a botanical berry carries its seed on the inside. You can see they've got their seeds on the outside, and what we actually eat is a swollen receptacle. It's a part of the flower stem. It doesn't really matter what you call them, they are delicious. And I've got some of the most delicious varieties to plant today. The first variety I'm going to plant is one called Cambridge Rival, which is renowned to be one of the very sweetest. It's quite an old-fashioned variety. And like many productive plants, its flowering and fruiting, its growth is affected by day length, or the length of the night. And it comes into flower and fruit for quite a short period as those days get longer in late spring. It is well worth that short season. Alongside, I'm going to put some other seasonal varieties because I want to make sure I extend that harvest. Like so many other productive crops, strawberries have been bred and cultivated over the years to improve certain characteristics, and many of the modern hybrids aren't affected really by day length at all. They'll continue to flower and fruit right through the warmer months. It does mean that they exhaust themselves, so as plants they do need to be replaced every couple of years, but they are really productive. I'm planting a couple. I've got Adina, which is an old favourite, and then Melba, which is a new one on the market. And last but not least, a couple of wild strawberries. They produce tiny berries, but they are packed with flavour. And as always, when I plant food plants, I have to plant a few flowers. This one's a fail-safe alyssum. It's full of nectar. You can actually smell it, which means it attracts all of those pollinating insects, as well as the predators of any pests. And of course, some mulch. You could use straw, but in this case, I'm using some pine needles. These continue to break down and acidify the soil, which strawberries love. I'm going to give this little garden bed lots of attention over the coming months. I'm going to give it plenty of water and every now and then a good old liquid feed. I reckon that I'm going to get great crops out of this because who wants a single strawberry? You want a bowl full. I reckon this is a sweet use of this little space.
My pandanus is full of fruit, but when it flowers, it fills my house with sweet fragrance. Right now, I've got 3 other plants which are doing just the same job. This is a spindle palm. In the wild, it's critically endangered, but it's quite common in gardens. And in my garden, it flowers all year round. And it doesn't just have a lovely fragrance, it smells of fruit. When I smell this, I get hungry. And just over on the other side of the steps, I've got the Cuban frangipani. Another endangered plant in the wild, but dead easy to grow. And they're available from specialist growers. That flowers for 9 months of the year, and it fills my house with a beautiful sweet fragrance, which is even more intense at night. And another perfume beauty is this, the large-leaved dragon's blood tree from South Africa. Not difficult to grow, just needs a little bit of water in dry weather, but it's a little bit of a struggle to find. You'll have to go out hunting for this plant. For 4 nights a year, it produces these massive flower heads, and it switches on its scent at night. The reason it does this is because it's moth-pollinated. Now, all of these plants are growing in my front garden, and I've positioned them to take advantage of the prevailing winds, which bring the fragrance through the house. And I think that's worth a thought when you're designing your garden.
Every now and then we come across something that we've never seen before with plants. And this next story was just that. Hold on to your hand drills, everyone. You're about to be blown away.
After I'd sold my business and I didn't know what else to do with myself and thought I might just travel around Australia for a year or two. So I bought a second-hand bus and had it fitted out and took off with no real plan except to go and explore Australia. I had 2 solar panels on the top of the bus for power, 3 great big deep cycle batteries, and my sewing machines, and I could work wherever I was. My name is Lynn Stone, and I am a textile artist, a botanical artist. So that's a lot easier than winding it on by hand. These are all flowers that I've made. I travelled around in my bus and I collected all the originals of these where they were growing naturally. I could find an interesting specimen and pull it apart and start making it. I think I'm a botanical artist, but I work in 3 dimensions. This is a lovely little one. It grows as a street tree in Alice Springs. And its original name was Orbifolia, and I've stuck to that because it's got nice round leaves. But now they call it Mini Ritchie, which describes the bark. But I think Orbifolia is better. And another Central Australian one, this one's gorgeous. It's the Victoria wattle. It's a nondescript grey-green shrub with horrible prickles, and I found it growing up the Stuart Highway between Port Augusta and Alice Springs. And then in September, if you're coming down to get out of the build-up in Darwin, it is just a froth of beautiful flowers. It's gorgeous. I was a student at Box Hill TAFE, Art and Design for Embroidery, the course was called, and it was 1 day a week for 2 years. And the tutor was talking us up for a major project in 2nd year. And I can remember sitting there with my head on my hands at the table, and the idea came, it just was a light globe moment. I don't know how or why, and I've done nothing else ever since. I just make flowers. This is Acacia pycnantha, or golden wattle, the symbol of our land. And this was a prototype for one that is now in the Visitors Centre at the National Botanic Gardens in Canberra. I was pretty proud. That was my first big commission. The callistemon took me 20 years to work out because it's got lots of little sepals. Each flower has its own little sepals there, and they're very fine and they overlap. And I kept experimenting, and yes, I know, as my friends say, either barking mad or talented. I'm not sure, maybe a bit of both. I recently had to fill in a form that said, what techniques do you use? And the first technique is observation, and then it's stitching and dyeing. But the observation's the main thing. The accuracy of the work's very important because a normal botanical artist who works in watercolour, it's very, very important to get all the details and to record everything accurately because people use that for plant identification. And just because I can't work in 2 dimensions doesn't mean I can't get the same accuracy, and I want to tell the story of the plant so that people can see it. That is my favourite. I worked really hard all the time I've been making them, and I'm never able to get them dangly enough. But finally, this one, I got dangly enough. And another hard bit with this is that the rotten thing has a fine line of red going down the vein down here, which requires a very fine paintbrush with dye and a steady hand. And then I had to get the frosted look on the stem, and that took me a few years to work out. But it's the same as I use for the pollen on the stamens, which is puff paint. I use rayon thread, and it's soft and pliable. I just get white and I dye it all. The dyes, when I first started using them, because they're just like coloured water, I put them on with a paintbrush, and I had a lot of trouble controlling them, so I took myself off to watercolour classes for a couple of years. In a previous life, I had a company that wrote computer software for solicitors, so I was fairly at home with computers. And so as the digitising software for embroidery machines was developed, I took to it like a duck to water. So this is where I do it all, my playroom as I call it. And when I first started, I just had one sewing machine that did straight stitch and zigzag and a hoop, and I did it all by hand. It's been 20 years now, and as technology's developed, I've got more machines, so now I program it all. I can get onto the computer and set where the stitches are going to go and get very, very accurate. And that allowed me to do the callistemon and also the pincushion hakea. Because the pincushion hakea, you've got to do... They come out looking like that, like little spaceships. Each one has 4 little stamens, and now I've got this really accurate machine. I can get that right and working properly. I have no idea how many techniques I've invented. I've invented tools, and I've repurposed some tools, like my drill, from one thing to another. I went to a fisherman's shop, and I found this bobbin holder, which instead of trying to wrangle a thread and keep tension and everything, it just holds things absolutely still, and you can wind the thread around easy as. I have a friend who is a nurse who gave me a pair of archery forceps, which are wonderful for holding things when you've got to sew little bits and pieces. My friends have all been saying that when I go under the bus, no one's going to know how I did it and the whole thing's going to be lost. So I spent about the last 3 years documenting the whole thing and publishing it as a book, which I want to give away to all the craft guilds, so they'll put it in their libraries. I want to share. I want someone else to start making these, and then I'll have somebody to pass ideas around with.
I don't know about you, but I think I might have a crack at some garden-inspired craft this weekend. But if you want something a little simpler, here's your list of jobs for the weekend. Cool temperate gardeners grab those old loppers and show them some love. Clean, sharpen, tighten and grease up with a fine light oil. Sunflowers are sure to bring a smile, so for a smashing summer show, sow seeds now. Bung some beans into the same bed. They'll use the stems of the sunflowers to climb and twine. It's not too late to plant bulbs of summer flowering faves like liliums, gladioli and dahlias. Perfect in the patch or large pots, they need free-draining soil, full sun and regular feeding. Blooming now is the wax flower, Philotheca myoporoides. This neat native is a great small shrub for warm temperate gardens. Hardy, adaptable and the foliage is sweetly scented. Boysenberries, raspberries, blackberries, whichever you have, it's a very good time to feed them. A generous serve of sheep poo and blood and bone is perfect for these ravenous rosaceae. Head into the shed, grab that old rusty shovel and get restoring. Remove rust with vinegar and steel wool, sandpaper handle and head, and then finish off with a layer of linseed oil. Subtropical gardeners, Ixora, are starting to develop bucket loads of buds, so keep them well watered and provide a little liquid potash for a spectacular spring-summer show. Pretty and palatable with a delicate basil mint flavour, Perilla frutescens, also known as shiso, can be sown now. Pop seeds in the fridge for a week and then plant into moist shade. Broken pots got you feeling shattered? Upcycle them. Bits of busted pots can be used as decorative mulch, garden edges, DIY plant labels, or even to conceal plain plastic pots. In tropical gardens, the edible fruits of the ryeberry, Syzygium lumanii, are beginning to ripen. Chill fruits straight after harvesting. They'll last up to a month in the fridge. Got too many teacups? Turn them into pretty planters. Drill a couple of drainage holes to each cup using a ceramic drill bit, add potting mix and pop in the perfect plant. Terrific! Bring in the birdwing butterflies and plant Aristolaceae acuminata. The large leaves of this vigorous sun-loving native vine are a favoured food for a range of beautiful butterflies. Arid gardeners, take the space under your trees from plain to productive and sow seeds of warrigal greens. This native spinach substitute is tasty, tough and an excellent living mulch. Perfect for pots and rockeries, Sturt's pigface is an unusual succulent endemic to Australia. With thick, fleshy foliage and creamy flowers, it's worth tracking down. Give old timber outdoor furniture a new lease on life. Clean with water and mild detergent, lightly sand if needed, and apply oil with a soft cloth in the direction of the wood grain. And don't forget our website is full of fact sheets to help you with your weekend projects. Well, that's it for this week of Looking Back. But we have a brand new episode ready for you next week. With so much on the go, I can't wait to see you then. Bye.
I'm going to show you how with a little bit of planning in your garden, you can keep your home a kaleidoscope of vintage and unusual cut flowers all year round.
But did you know that I have a passion for paving? And I'll show you how you can do a little bit of paving like this at your place.
For many of us, our gardens are the places that we look to renew and refresh. I'll meet someone whose garden has become central to his recovery from a life-changing event.